Truth Under Threat, Defense of Democracy and Safeguarding Democratic Resilience Against Disinformation in the Area of Geopolitical Mayhem. This session addresses the critical issue of disinformation in the light of the new EU regulations on electoral advertising and the spreading use of the AI deepfakes. And our panelists are Arthur O'Leary, CEO, Electoral Commission of Ireland, Anett Mádi-Nátor, cybersecurity expert, managing partner at CyEx, and Ágnes Urbán, director, Mertek Media Monitor, associate professor at Corvinus University of Budapest. And the moderator is Péter Krekó, director, Political Capital Institute, fellow, GMF US. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And please stay with us for this panel as well. The reward in the end will be the coffee break. So thanks a lot for our esteemed panelists to be with us today. The topic that we are going to discuss is a big one: truth under threat, defense of democracy as safeguarding democratic resilience against disinformation. And we have excellent experts with us, and also someone who has practical experience on how to try to implement the electoral regulations and how to try to push political players to play by the rules. So the concept of the panel is like disinformation poses a mounting threat to democratic resilience in Europe, not only through outright falsehoods, but also manipulation of information flows, capture of media, and distortion of public debate. As the EU advances new regulatory tools and institutions, such as the transparency and targeting of political advertising, the digital services or media freedom acts, and strengthened electoral oversight, the panel brings together experts to examine how truth can be defended in practice and what more remains to be done. So our panel has a special actuality in the sense that there are regulations that are just coming coming into place, and this is something that we will touch upon in the panel. And just as a stage setter, my brilliant colleagues at Political Capital have recently written an analysis, and I just would read the title, which I think describes rather well the nature of the animal that we are talking about. A Vietnamese origin Facebook page posing as Puerto Rican advertising anti-Ukrainian messages to Hungarians and Poles using African money. So all the advantages of globalization are here with us when it comes to the information and disinformation space. And also it's important because there is one element here: advertised messages. Please raise your hands if you have seen political messages advertised coming up on your YouTube or Facebook page in the last month. So yeah, it's Hungary, which we know is one of the champions in that respect. You won't see these messages, at least theoretically, after 10th of October because of the change of the regulatory landscape, and also with the new regulation taking effect on 10th of October, the TTPA that I mentioned beforehand, this transparency and targeting of political advertising. As a result of that, both Meta and Google have announced that they will stop accepting political advertising in the EU. And the big question here, especially for us Hungarians who have seen these ads coming up to our faces whenever we go on Facebook, but for all EU citizens, that how it can change the information landscape and also the disinformation landscape. And not everyone is happy about this regulation. Some says that it will silence also some voices who are fighting for good causes, and also it will not help the the situation of some authorities to communicate through the public. So I would turn to the whole panel to discuss this first issue. So what do you expect as a result of this changing regulation? And also, first I would turn to Arthur Leary, who is the head of the Electoral Commission in Ireland. Ireland is the home for the headquarters of many European very large online platforms. So what would you expect as a result of this regulation? Also, can it make the life of an electoral oversight body easier or more difficult?
Oh, I think it was intended to make our lives much easier and much easier to regulate this space. But the unintended consequences of these regulations are going to play out in the weeks and months ahead. So, as you mentioned, Peter, in 23 days' time, the regulation on TTPA, which is transparency and targeting of political advertising, comes into force, which in essence means that every single message by every political actor, whether offline or online, has to have a label on it. And in most cases, there'll be a QR code which will bring you to a website which will indicate who paid for the ad, who benefits from the ad, how much the ad cost, how long it's going to be published for, and who the ad is targeted at. You know, so it's going to have huge implications, and I'm not sure how much awareness there is within political systems about this, because politicians and candidates and all political actors, and as you said, NGOs and civil society groups use advertising as a very important way of targeting their audiences online. And because some of the big groups, some of the big platforms, Meta and Google, have said, this is too hard for us, we're not going to do it, they have withdrawn entirely from the political space, you know, and they won't be accepting political ads from anybody in Europe for as long as these regulations are in force, you know. So this has huge implications on a personal level for us. I mean, as an independent electoral commission, we use advertising online all the time because our hardest to reach group are young people who hang out in virtual spaces, you know, and this is where they hang out, is the only way we have of getting at them. We encourage them to enroll, to get on the electoral register. We explain to them how to vote, how their vote works, and at polling time, we encourage them to get out and vote. And the platforms have told us that they will also be no longer taking our ads. We protested. We're not political ads. We're in the happy position of not caring about candidates. We only care about voters, and they don't care. We're all lumped into this together. And looking at the other side of the coin, if I can, just for a moment, Peter, the inability of political actors to pay for ads and to have their content seen may lead to different types of content as candidates increasingly try to develop viral content, something that'll grab people's imagination. So AI, deepfakes, all of these things are things that we really need to keep an eye out for in the future. So we don't know what it's going to look like, but I suspect we'll find out fairly quickly. Ireland has a presidential election in October. The Netherlands have a general election. Estonia has elections, and Denmark also has elections. So this is going to play out very, very quickly after the 10th of October.
Thank you very much. I think the effects of this regulation, I think this is something that we will continue discussing. And I would turn to Maryia now. Maryia Sadouskaya-Komlach, she's the Global Engagement Strategist at Free Press Unlimited, also a fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis. I forgot to mention at the beginning that Science Plus is one of our partners in the whole conference, and this panel is in cooperation with Science Plus that Maryia represents as well. So Maryia, you have, and Science Plus is a platform, if you don't know it, worth visiting, that collects and also distributes and produces quite a lot of good analysis and insight on this different disinformation trends. So you have an overview on the European disinformation landscape, and also with some with knowledge on the most difficult places as well when it comes to the truthness of information. So what would be your expectations? So will the disappearance of the electoral ads, will it rather help the enemies of democracy or the Democrats, to oversimplify a bit the question?
Well, thank you very much. You gave me so many titles, I don't know from which to start. However, I should tell you also that I come from a country where a 39-year-old populist leader on the slogans of fight with corruption came to power, then he dominated the courts, then he killed the media, then he actually made the referendum changing constitutional power, and wow, that was in 1994, Belarus. So, you know, we have some experience of seeing how certain, and he was supported by a big country with financial and political interests, Russia. So we come to these cycles in the history when we are thinking we're fighting with something very new, let's say AI-powered online advertising, but we're actually, as some of the people said earlier at the panels, are actually talking to the same adversaries. So the new regulations that you mentioned, I would agree here with Commissioner O'Leary, it probably means good, but probably will create problems for the well-willing actors inside the European Union. And first and foremost, independent media. Another actor who really uses advertising a lot to understand, to go beyond the bubbles, to try to make people talk and not polarize and understand what youngsters want, what older users of social media want, are media. And even already in 2023, when legitimate national media during the election year in Poland were trying to just promote on Facebook stories about environment, climate change, domestic violence, women's rights, these stories were rejected on the basis of being political. Imagine now with this new law how easy, in brackets, it will be for the media to say we're not political if even an independent electoral body in Ireland cannot prove it to the big tech. And the second threat I see here, although I do believe it's very important to be transparent about political advertising, is that that will cause a wave of copycat laws outside the European Union. Already now, governments from Nicaragua to Russia to other places say that their foreign agents' laws are just copying the US and some other laws. So imagine you have a wonderful law where everyone whom you consider to be a political advertiser has to reveal the source of his advertising and build a QR code to lead to it. I think we will soon see all across the world people saying we're just repeating what the European Union does, and if they don't admit it, they're hypocrites.
Thank you. We have a very, very important point, and also thanks for bringing the Belarusian experience here. Anett, I would turn to you now. Anett, Mádi-Nátor is a cybersecurity expert and managing partner at CyEx, and I would ask, I mean, when we discussed yesterday on what we are going to discuss in the panel, you were the one beside Art who recommended this topic of advertisements coming up. What do you think? How do you, what should we expect in terms of how political players might adapt to this new situation, and how much it can be exploited by even possibly external actors who would like to interfere into political processes and change the information landscape in a given country? Thank you for the question. To be honest, I don't know how political actors will react to the technological consequences of this new regulation. So I can only describe what we may expect in the cyberspace as a technological change, and through that changes in the ways of information operations in general. But for that, I believe it's very important to understand what we understand under the concept as information operations, because probably it's not the same for you, the audience and the panel, and for me, because I come from the cybersecurity angle. So when we talk about information operations, we distinguish at least two layers. There is a cognitive layer,
where the discussions usually go on and that you refer to as well, both of you. And there is a technological layer, which also is affected very severely by this new regulation. And there is one strong consequence that we already foresee, is that those technological means or digital means via which political parties, powers, governments, whoever, wish to utilize the effect of political advertisement, they will have to change in a way that they have to turn back to organic players. And that means that everything that we learned to identify up to 1 month ahead in time, so up to October, will disappear. So we will have to be able to identify how this organic space develops and evolves. So that's one very important thing. I believe that everything will, it's like going back in time, 10 years, 15 years back in time, where we did not really have this very strong visibility on political advertisements. And so everything that is paid now and openly, like in a followable way. I know that there is no such word like followable, but everything that you can follow will disappear, and financing these political advertisements and also the means that technological means that will be utilized will go back to the gray zone somehow. So we are losing here, that's for sure. Also, to be able to run this sort of more organic way for political advertisement, we foresee a lot more cyber attacks, let's say, in a sense that the game for gaining access to databases that contain user data, online user data of potential targets, which are certain groups of society, certain layers of society. So the battle for these databases will definitely grow. So this kind of cyber operations, which belong to the technological part of the information operations, will go much stronger than they are now. Though I have to mention that the situation now is already absolutely severe, so we are expecting to go from absolutely bad to even worse in this respect.
Thanks for.
I hope I cheered you up.
Thanks for the hopeful comments and yeah, for the light of the end of the tunnel that you highlighted. Yeah, Ágnes, I would turn to you and yeah, just as a disclaimer, I would mention here that we are part of a project together with Ágnes called Hungarian Digital Media Observatory, which is an anti-disinformation project supported by the European Union. And why is it important here? Because we had a project that monitored the electoral ads, their quantity and also their quality. It was not always very high quality, we have to say, before the European parliamentary election. And yes, as many of you have raised your hands when asking about experience with political advertisement, yes, this is what we usually have as an experience in Hungary, that these electoral ads are omnipresent. What do you think the consequence of this modification and change of policies by Meta and Google can have on the Hungarian information and disinformation landscape in particular?
Actually, I think it will be surely a new era. In this sense, I'm probably more optimistic than many others.
Maybe than Anett in that respect.
But of course, I think we all know that the Hungarian ruling party is very creative in hacking the different kind of rules and regulation. So I think even if the Hungarian election will be much later than in some other countries, probably it will be a good test country to see how the political actors react to this new situation. Actually, I already have some ideas how it is possible to hack. The regulation, I don't want to talk very openly about it, but probably, for example, the pro-government media will have a role in spreading messages, and it will be very, very difficult to differentiate the political advertisement and the simple advertisement of the content.
And of the public media, for example, which aims to serve
in case of Hungary, the public service media is in a rather special situation. I mean, it is a kind of #1 player in spreading disinformation. So I think we will have extremely interesting weeks and months after 10th of October. And it will be worth to monitor the changes in several sense, especially on the one hand, how the political actors try to hack the system, and on the other hand, how the platforms react. So they take a risk-avoiding behavior just to fit to the or just to comply to the European regulation, and they will just stop this kind of harmful practices, or they try to monetize from the political advertisement as much as it is possible. But I have no idea what will happen, in fact.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. I would agree. I mean, we have our preliminary assessment, and we also think at my institution that the political forces that have a more diverse and plural information ecosystem, they have possibly more tools to circumvent the regulation. And also we have done some analysis in which we, that I mentioned before, in which we found that sometimes the categorization of ads as political or non-political is totally arbitrary, which means that you can just maybe try to hack the system by flooding it from multiple sources with political ads, hoping that they will be categorized as non-political. But yes, don't give good ideas for the super spreaders of disinformation. Art, I would turn back to you. Can you bring some optimism in the discussion in the sense that does Ireland have good experiences with cooperating, or I would say negotiating with the very large online platforms such as Google, such as Meta? Yeah, as it has been mentioned, they are headquartered in Dublin. As you mentioned recently, close to your office practically. So in European Union is right now rather struggling to try to force the regulations, Digital Services Act, the current Act on Advertisements when it comes to large online platforms. Can a member state itself play a different role? So can a member state act on its own behalf and have some better negotiated deals with these online platforms than the European Union when it comes to electoral ads, and also when it comes to spread of disinformation in the online space? That is usually the biggest concern of electoral oversight bodies in some countries at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we do our best. I mean, the relationship between the very large platforms and search engines and the EU is an adversarial one, because on the one hand, somebody has a big stick to which they try to beat people into submission, and normally when there's a disagreement, there's a fine of $1 billion involved, you know. So it was intended when our electoral commission was set up just a couple of short years ago that we would have some regulatory authority in this space, and then this was before the advent of the DSA. So we had 4 electoral events last year, and we had no regulatory powers. And I said, well, we can sit idly by, or we can actually go and talk to these guys and see what they have to say for themselves. So as you mentioned, Peter, their offices are all a kilometre away from my office. So I invited them all up, and they all came, you know, so Meta, Google, X, TikTok, they all came in and sat down, and we had a conversation that went a bit like...
did you have a dinner with them like Donald Trump did recently?
Yeah, no, I mean, they all came in with an open mind, and they sat down, and they were very friendly, and the conversation was, you have an awful lot of power here when it comes to communications and electoral integrity. And I would hate for us after an election to have to point at you and say, because of a failing on your part, the integrity of our electoral event was compromised. And it was a very civilized conversation, so I suggested that we would agree a series of principles and rules which we would all abide by in relation to transparency of advertising, the use of AI and deep fakes, and also mis and disinformation in relation to electoral process information. And I said, if we can agree some principles, then I'll go to the political system and say, well, here's all the content publishers, you're all the content creators. If these guys are going to abide by these rules, then candidates and political parties should also as well. And astonishingly, in 2 weeks, we came up with a framework which everybody was happy to sign up to, which agreed that there was huge potential for misuse of mis and disinformation and AI and deepfakes and all the rest of it as well. And interestingly, you know, the reason things take so long at an EU level is that the West Coast lawyers in the United States get involved. We agreed this amongst ourselves without recourse to the West Coast lawyers. Took 2 weeks, and we used it for all of our electoral events last year, and we hope to again use it for our presidential election in October, because legislating to deal with mis and disinformation is really, really difficult. I'm not sure there's anyone in the world has successfully done it yet. Many have tried, but failed, and we have to assume that it will be difficult, but if somebody does it, the technology is moving so quickly that the legislation can't possibly keep up with it. So it is incumbent on all of us, I would suggest, in my position, that we need to engage at a much more civil level with the platforms and appeal to their better angels. You know, and I know we're fortunate; they all work down the road from me. Many of my colleagues and my counterparts all over Europe and around the world, they can't even get replies to emails, no phone calls, no meetings. The platforms won't engage, but we have a very positive story to tell in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's surprising in the sense that this is something that the European Union has also tried to do with the Code of Conduct, Code of Practice on Disinformation, with mixed success so far. I would rather say. So you think, why do you, and my question would be that did they follow the rules that they have agreed to? Because, I mean, it's usually easy to sign a paper. I mean, to change your policies that costs you money as a grand corporation is a bit more difficult. So did they follow the rules? One question. The other question is, and I don't want to be cynical at that point, might it be that they just seen Ireland as a small market where they just do not lose that much revenue as what they can lose at the European Union?
All of these things are true. You know, so Ireland is very small, and we're good at building relationships. I think that's one thing, and we tell reasonable stories and all the rest of it for which we are famous. The Irish ambassador is here in the audience, Ragnar, so he'll be able to confirm all of those details. But we are small, but I think the platforms were probably surprised to be engaged with in a positive way when they are so used to be treated in such an adversarial fashion. This was different, you know, and TikTok, who don't take political advertisements, have agreed in the last couple of weeks to use Ireland as a test case for electoral management bodies. So they will take our ads on getting people on the register and showing them how to vote, educational videos, and the rest of it as well. So maybe that's a furrow that we should all be ploughing rather than having this adversarial relationship too. And I mean, we've had no instances when we engage with the platforms where they didn't do what they said they would. They gave us fast-track access to consideration of postings, etc., and we have agreed that where there is some egregious posts, then they will remove them, or they will label them, or in some way that they will change the algorithm to reduce the viewing as well. So the political system is very cynical, like you are. I've told this story in Parliament a couple of times, and to incredulous voices on the other side of the table, but let's see. I mean, every electoral event is a learning opportunity for us, a glorious opportunity to learn about how best to build relationships with the platforms.
Yes, thank you. Maryia, yeah, you highlighted the challenges that you see as we look ahead for this changing regulatory landscape and also the platform policies. What would you expect in the elections that are coming up in Europe? Because there will be quite a lot. I mean, in Czech Republic and also Art mentioned a lot of others. And yeah, do you see some possible strategies either for, let's say, media or just, I mean, voters who are consuming information on how to try to navigate in this new environment?
Well, let me add another characteristics of Irish market. On top of being small, it's also English speaking, which is a luxury which most of the countries in this region do not have. They don't have human or even proper AI moderators being able to understand what is sarcasm in Hungarian or Belarusian or even Romanian, right? So when the platforms are so eagerly, I think they will be also very eager with New Zealand or other places where they have enough capacity and where all of their instruments are actually built to be able to regulate the elections at minimal cost for them. Everything else, unfortunately, is at a higher cost and as a lower priority, as they're also not registered in Hungary or Romania, as far as I know. So this is where this adversarial position from the European Commission sometimes might be useful, although I should say that platforms, including TikTok, the Central European Office in Poland, are very friendly. They, I think, have co-applied for Horizon proposals under the European Union, trying to improve the debates, and it's not all black and white. Speaking of upcoming elections, I think we're again talking 10 years backward here, and not because of the new regulation, but because the actors who are now influencing the elections are doing everything to pollute the databases from which AI take their information. An average 25-year-old doesn't go to Facebook. I mean, it's like their grandparents' or parents' social media. They're also not spending time on Snapchat, and at best, they're following their parents on Instagram. But for everything related to their life, they go to one of the AI agents. And it has been determined by several researchers that, for example, the Russia, sorry to name Russia, no one names it today, but the Russia-aligned actors and some Chinese-aligned actors are actually not even trying to make their web pages most popular anymore. They create a lot of pages and social media accounts which have 10 followers with only one reason: to enter the databases from which AI provides you the so-called objective information. So I agree with you, Commissioner. Any legislative initiative would probably be very late, but I'm not sure you talked to OpenAI or Anthropic or Chinese operators of AI either when you prepared that code of conduct. What does it mean for the elections? Frankly, media and journalists, they gave up on trying to persuade the social media platforms. I've been at Danish dialogues about Ukraine, I've been at meta dialogues about Russia. They always talk to you, they always promise. They're at best helping to remove 1% of harmful content. And what they're not really helping is guiding people to alternative, fact-based content. The moment when you say, what can you do to actually promote the non-polarizing, the bringing people together, the answering the grievances content, which is produced by legitimate content producers, they say, oh, freedom of speech, markets, regulation, we can't do much. And therefore, many media are trying to develop their apps, their own platforms. They're all alternative mini social media. In more restrictive environments, they're also working on alternative VPNs, which are associated with their brands. They're trying rather to solve the issue together, collectively learning from each other about how to make sure that when a person doesn't know how to form an opinion of something very alien to them, as Mr. Krastev said today, they would turn to the source they trust. And that source would be not a person they just met last week who spoke nice populist words, but would be media or independent content producers that they trust. And I think this will be the answer, maybe not in Czech Republic, everyone is very pessimistic there, everyone tells me who wins already for a year, I don't know why they even have elections, they could have appointed Babiš a year ago, and you know it will be much easier, but maybe in the more electoral campaigns that would be deciding about people's life on the local level, on the council level, on the regional level, and also on youth mobilization. So I would look at that relationship with AI and in which countries the media will be strong enough to be trusted even if big platforms create barriers.
Thank you. Anett, I would raise a question to you that is related to the democratic resilience part of our discussion that our conversation is heading to. So you highlighted the threats and painting a bit of gloomy future on what comes ahead. In the audience we have not just very good experts, student journalists, but also people who are, let's say, running the social media sites of embassies, of civic, of NGOs, of think tanks, of maybe political movements. So if I read your words well, then you're suggesting that there can be maybe more organizations can be targeted with cyber attacks or different kinds of malign interference. What would you recommend as basic principles of cautiousness that can save us in this dangerous information jungle?
Invest in cybersecurity.
Do you know a good company to hire, maybe?
Yeah, of course, of course. So, but more seriously, it's actually very interesting for me to hear what your stance on this issue is, because all of you approach the subject from the humans side, and you try to somehow grab this subject via regulating or influencing the social media platform operators to do something for you. To lessen the danger of political influencing operations, if I understand you properly. Though I have to, so you may want to consider one thing, okay? And I don't want to be hysterical, not even over emphasizing things, but basically social media is only a platform, a means for something. And what you should much more consider is basically the content and the actors who generate content and who want to utilize or who actually utilize successfully different ways of social media, different channels of social media to achieve certain purposes. And to understand this even, you may want to step one step back and you may want to understand what actors have what sort of motivations. Let me give you one example, because you mentioned electoral campaigns, probably, if I understood you well, and the elections in general. Different actors in the cyberspace have different motivations, and you can actually identify, you actually know, if you are a subject matter expert, that what are the basic motivations of one adversary and what are the basic motivations and also the techniques and procedures to conduct that kind of motivation of the other adversary. And if you actually consider the whole subject from a different perspective, like hybrid warfare or asymmetric warfare, you easily reach out to military doctrines where the means of influencing campaigns, as you are saying it, or information operations as we say it, are clearly described. So you can actually understand which adversary or which actor will conduct its information operations and through which specific means. So From our perspective, the social media operators, the platforms, are just one tiny piece of this whole equation. Also, we have to mention, to be unbiased, that at the moment, like today, there is no technical way of filtering the content, filtering information. And as long as internet is used to something else and not to what it was originally designed, because it wasn't designed to run such a vast digital, like global ecosystem, it operates in a way that you actually cannot filter the content. There is no technology for that. Okay? So what you are looking for is basically a non-existent thing. From technical perspective, we don't have it. So I would recommend a completely different approach and to try to grab the subject from the actor's side or actor's angle, because now what you do is you basically describe this whole situation from the victim perspective. The victim here is basically the user who participates in the elections and whose opinion is influenced in a certain way. But you should much rather turn to the actor itself who wants to influence. Sorry. I know it's not a cyber answer, but so in the cyberspace, you cannot really do much at the moment to lessen the potential of influencing, because influencing is a cognitive content, not a technical one. 80% at least.
Okay. Ágnes, Mertek have done quite a lot of advocacy as well and analysis related to the European Media Freedom Act. Should we expect, it will be more again on the, it's half of the, let's say, perpetrator side, half of the victim side, but what should we expect as a result of this regulation? You think, can it really help to sustain, how to say, a less polluted information landscape?
Shortly saying, no.
No.
But
I wish for a more hopeful response.
Yeah, so European Media Freedom Act is absolutely important, especially from a Hungarian perspective, but we are in the very beginning of a long process. So it can be a legal basis to file lawsuits, to find the boundaries of the regulation, but it will take long years to find the possibilities and the real effective sides of the European Media Freedom Act. For example, the transparency of the state advertising rules are absolutely important, but it takes long years to define what transparency is, what undiscriminatory spending means. So after long years, it will help a lot to demonetize the propaganda, but in short run, it will not help.
Thank you for the sobering response. And given that we have a brilliant panel also in terms of keeping the time, we have a bit of time for questions. So if you happen to have some, we are happy to pass over the mic. We have time for 3 questions, and we would come back to the panel first. Richard, please.
Thank you. I have a cyber question, just a brief follow-up question on what you said, that we don't have a technical ability to filter content. So I focus on China in my research, and I wonder if China doesn't have this, like basically what they have as part of their censorship Great Firewall, if this is not what you were describing, which we don't have. Yeah.
Sorry, let me just collect the rest of the questions and then you can respond. Okay, I've seen a hand over there.
Thank you very much. Ivan Nogradi from University of Vienna. My question would be regarding the moral and legal aspects of foreign cyber interference into campaigns. What could we label as sufficient proof or basis for foreign interference into political campaigns and election campaigns? It was the most striking example for this was maybe Romania, but I think it was also raised in Moldova, and also I think it's in the discussion in Hungary in relation to Russian interference. How can we be sure and say, for instance, that we must repeat the elections because so harsh interference, foreign interference, cyber interference occurred, which may have persuaded voters to change their votes or flip their votes?
Yeah, thank you. Also important question. Anyone else? If not, then Anett, I would give you first the floor, and maybe Art, you have something to say about that as well. Maryia? Then, okay.
So
Anett, it's you now.
Yeah, it's me. Okay, so I believe the first question was about China, right? How they do filtering and content management. Without going into technical details, because they run very complex and AI-driven systems to do this.
You said we don't have the ability, but they do have it, right?
Yes, for one specific language, but the majority or a significant part of that content filtering is actually in the physical space, in a sense that they also follow human movement, like one person going from one place to another. And they also have that kind of sensors placed in large cities, which can help national security, but also utility management companies to identify who is where in which square meter a person is. So that kind of content filtering that you refer to is linked to the way how they follow physical movement of certain people, and this is one complex system. So it's not only content filtering. If you're asking for content about content filtering and the technology that can be applied in this sense for one specific language, it may be developed, but it's for Chinese and not for English language or any other languages that we use in Europe, for example. Yes, it does, but okay, if you want to go in technical details, we can discuss it in the break. I guess there is a break after this, yeah. But it's not, what I mean is that it's not implied in social media platforms. It's not built in the social media platform engines that the majority of European people use. And also that's the same is true for that kind of social media or that social media segment that the US citizens use. So it's not built in the platforms. The Chinese system is completely different, and they use content filter. They don't utilize content filtering only via the online platforms that users use, but they also imply different additional technical means for that. I hope it answers your question somehow. It's from technical perspective, it's a more complex thing. If you take Facebook, for example, or even TikTok, but let's talk about Facebook at the moment. There is no content filtering, efficient content filtering mechanism at the moment implied, for example, for Hungarian language. We have algorithms available for behavior analysis and sentiment analysis, but it's not built in a way at the moment in Facebook so that it could filter out malicious behavior, but it could also filter out, in a positive sense, non-malicious behavior.
Okay. Art, the other question on...
Thank you for the question. You know,
when can you attribute and what can you do?
I normally sleep like a baby, but that's the one thing that keeps me awake at night. You know, this threat. I mean, as Maryia said, you know, that we have tried to deal with the content publishers and we've tried to deal with the content creators who are candidates and people working on behalf of candidates and political actors as part of our framework. The one thing we can't control are people outside who have an interest in casting doubt on the integrity of elections or electoral events. They want to create chaos. And the definitions here, and again, this comes back to the point about the legislation not being able to move as quickly as as developments. I mean, it's so inoffensive sounding, you know, inauthentic behavior. That's what it's called when somebody tries to interfere, a malign foreign actor tries to interfere in an electoral event. So every country has the tools, has the laws to investigate this, whether you can ever find a culprit, particularly if they're in a country outside your own, or bring them to justice, etc. All you can do is prepare for it. The Venice Commission wrote a brilliant report after Romania. You should read it. I won't try and summarize it here because it's very, very brilliant. It looked at this from all kinds of perspectives, and the ultimate warning here is that you can't always assume when something happens electorally that people didn't expect that there must have been some kind of interference which influenced it, you know. So we have all seen elections in many countries. The tide comes in and the tide goes out for political parties and for actors as well. So you have to bear that in mind when you're looking for a reason. Particularly political actors are looking for reasons why they unexpectedly lost an election or unexpectedly won an election as well. So I'd encourage everybody to read it. They're a very brilliant group of people, and they were asked to have a look at this following the controversy after the Romanian presidential election.
Thank you. Maryia, do you have
a couple of comments
remarks?
Shortly. First of all, Poland, for example, the government had this choice during this year's presidential election, and everyone had a consensus that it's more important to keep the institutions and democracy, because also the level of the interference was not as significant as in Romania. To me, the question is whether if suddenly you decide to annul the elections under suspicion, and the suspicion proves wrong, do you have enough guts to come and allow the same candidates to run again? And this is the first test. And I also wanted to very, very briefly comment to this whole perpetrator thing. It's great if we will put all perpetrators in jail, let's say perpetrators of cyber attacks, but the problem is, same as with organized crime, the seat will never be empty. There will be new people or corporations or AI agents trying to influence humanity in the way they want. So if we do not address the supply side, what is there as an alternative? If we remove all the bad guys, do we still have media and others who are able to create science-based or research-based but trustable content? Then just addressing the bad criminals will not help us much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we have two other reasons to focus on the demand side as well. I mean, one is that any information operation can only be successful if there are recipients who believe in the false information. And the other one is that, unfortunately, not all the countries are so vigilant to push back external information operations and disinformation attacks if they come from countries such as Russia or such as China, for example. But I think we could strike a rather good balance between the demand side and the supply side. So thanks for all the speakers for their brilliant inputs, and thanks for the great questions and for staying with us. And let me ask a bit of applause for the panel.